You won't believe what happened to me recently. It started out like any normal day in my quiet neighborhood, but quickly turned into something straight out of a movie. There's this woman in my homeowners association. Let's just call her Karen, who's known for stirring up trouble. But this time, she took things way too far. Without any real authority, she somehow managed to send what looked like police officers to my door, claiming I was under arrest. The problem? They weren't real cops. They were fakes, and it was all part of her plan to intimidate me and cause chaos. Now, here's the twist. I'm actually a U.S. Marshal. So, when these fake officers showed up, I wasn't about to just stand by. This isn't just about a neighborhood dispute anymore. It's about identity, authority, and standing up against people who try to abuse the system for their own gain. I'm going to share exactly what happened that day, how I recognized this scam immediately, and what this meant for my safety and reputation. You'll hear about Karen's history with the HOA, why she might have targeted me specifically, and how a simple misunderstanding spiraled into something so serious it involved fake arrests and real law enforcement. This story dives deep into the drama that can happen behind the calm suburban streets and shows just how dangerous things can get. When people decide to play by their own rules, I'm not going to lie, what happened left me shaken and unsure of what would come next. The fake arrest was just the beginning, and what followed was something I never expected. Stick around, because in the next part, I'll reveal what I did to turn the tables and how this whole nightmare really ended. You won't want to miss it before that day. Karen had always been a thorn in the HOA's side, but I never expected her to go this far. She's one of those people who loves control, always complaining about neighbors, pushing rules beyond reason, and somehow convincing others to back her up. The HOA meetings were tense whenever she showed up with her sharp words and accusations. But this fake arrest thing was on a whole new level. I had no idea what triggered her to cross that line with me personally. To give you some context, I've lived in this neighborhood for years, trying to keep things peaceful and respectful. Being a U.S. Marshal isn't something I advertise. It's a serious job, and most people don't know it about me. I like keeping my personal and professional life separate. But Karen's actions forced my hand, and things quickly escalated. When the fake officers knocked, claiming I was under arrest for supposed violations or disputes, I knew it was an elaborate stunt designed to scare me and maybe get me out of the way. The moment they stepped onto my property, I started piecing everything together. Their uniforms looked off, their badges fake, and their tone was more aggressive than professional. I stayed calm, but inside, my mind was racing. How did Karen pull this off? Was she working alone, or did she have help from someone in the HOA? Could there be something bigger behind all this drama? There were so many questions swirling in my head at the same time. I felt the weight of what this could mean, not just for me, but for the entire neighborhood. If someone could impersonate police like that and use it to harass others, what kind of precedent would it set? The situation was far from over, and as I watched those fake officers, I realized the fight was just beginning. What came next would test everything: my skills, my patience, and the truth behind Karen's intentions. As I stood there, facing these so-called officers, my instincts kicked in. Their body language didn't match trained professionals, and their vague threats about neighborhood violations were full of holes. I asked for identification. They hesitated. That alone told me everything I needed. But I didn't react at least not yet. I needed to understand how deep this went. Was Karen just acting out of spite, or was there something bigger happening in our quiet HOA community? Behind the scenes, things had been simmering for a while. Karen had been upset ever since I voted against her motion to restrict backyard structures, a change that would have affected several families, including mine. Some neighbors whispered that she held grudges, but no one ever thought she'd go to this extent. I started thinking about a few recent odd things, like how my trash cans were mysteriously reported to the HOA 3 times in 1 week, or how someone kept filing noise complaints about my home office, even though I barely made a sound. I also couldn't ignore the fact that Karen seemed unusually close to someone on the HOA board, a guy named Rick who always seconded her motions, no matter how extreme. He kept quiet in public, but had access to a lot of member info, including addresses, schedules, and even security camera placements. Suddenly, it clicked. Could he have helped her stage this fake arrest? Meanwhile, a few neighbors began noticing the drama. One of them, Maria, who'd had her own run-ins with Karen over a garden fence, reached out to me quietly, saying she'd seen unfamiliar cars parked outside Karen's home late at night. She didn't want to get involved, but it was clear she knew more than she let on. With the pieces slowly falling into place, I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about power, manipulation, and how far someone would go to bend the rules of a homeowners association. But I still didn't have proof. Not yet. And as much as I wanted to confront Karen and end this, I knew I had to move carefully. One wrong move could make things even worse. After that strange encounter with the fake officers, I knew I couldn't just let it go. I started digging quietly, watching Karen's movements and keeping a low profile around the neighborhood. Didn't want to tip her off that I suspected something bigger was going on. Every morning, I'd see her out on her usual walk, pretending nothing had happened, smiling at neighbors, waving like she hadn't just orchestrated a bogus arrest. That's what made it worse. The calm, it felt calculated. I contacted a few law enforcement contacts off the record, asking about any reports of impersonators. In the area, nothing came up, which only made things more suspicious. It meant whatever Karen did, she kept it tight and local, no paper trail, no digital noise. She'd either paid someone or convinced them to help her under the radar. Meanwhile, I started reviewing footage from the security cameras I'd installed around my property. That's when I saw it. 2 days before the fake officers came, a car had parked just outside my camera's edge, same make and model as the one that pulled up with those so-called cops. Whoever was behind the wheel clearly knew how to avoid being recorded. And then things escalated. My mailbox was ripped open one morning. HOA violation letters appeared taped to my door in the middle of the night, unsigned and unofficial. One of my tires was mysteriously slashed. It wasn't random anymore. This was targeted. I was being pushed, tested, and whoever was behind, it wanted me to crack or leave. But I wasn't going anywhere. Late one evening, Maria slipped me a flash drive. "You didn't get this from me," she said, "but you need to see it." Her hands were shaking. The drive had footage she'd captured from her side camera footage of a late-night meeting behind Karen's house. There were faces I didn't expect to see. People from the HOA board. One of them was Rick. And then, in the grainy shadows, a man in a fake police uniform stepped into frame. That was the moment everything changed. I stared at the footage on that flash drive, watching the shadowy figures move behind Karen's backyard fence. There was no mistaking it. Rick was there, along with 2 others I recognized from the HOA enforcement committee. They were standing close, whispering, heads turning as if checking for anyone nearby. But the real shock hit when the man in the fake police uniform turned around. His face lit up for a second as he passed under the motion light. I paused the video. My stomach dropped. I knew him. His name was Darren, and he used to work private security on one of my older federal task force assignments. He'd been dismissed for misconduct years ago. What was he doing here with Karen? That's when it all started to make sense. Karen wasn't just staging a neighborhood stunt. She had reached into my past. This was personal. Somehow she had found someone with a grudge against me and pulled him into her scheme. And if Darren was involved, this wasn't just a petty HOA dispute anymore. It was coordinated harassment, maybe worse. It explained how the impersonation was so convincing, and why these threats kept escalating without leaving any official trace. She had help from someone who knew how to work around systems, someone with experience in staying invisible. The next morning, I found a handwritten note shoved into my garage door frame. No envelope, just bold black letters. Back off before things get serious. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just being pushed. I was being hunted. And someone wanted me silenced before I could expose the truth. I couldn't go public with it yet, not without more solid proof. But I also knew time was running out. Maria had taken a risk giving me that flash drive. And if Karen and Darren found out I had it, they wouldn't wait around. I needed a plan. Fast. Because whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be just another HOA meeting gone bad. I knew I had one shot to bring this whole thing to light, and it had to be done without tipping Karen or Darren off too early. That night, I called in a quiet favor from a trusted contact in federal law enforcement. I handed over the footage Maria gave me, along with everything I documented: the fake arrest attempt, the forged HOA violations, even the threatening note. They took it seriously, especially once I explained Darren's past and how this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. It was a coordinated act of impersonation and harassment. The plan was simple. We let Karen think she was still in control. A few days passed. Nothing changed. I went about my business like normal, knowing full well federal agents were watching her house from a distance. Then came the HOA's emergency board meeting. Called by Karen, of course. She'd planned to vote on a motion to expel me from the community for non-compliance and threats, backed by falsified complaints. I showed up that night in the communitycenter.com, but ready. As Karen stood at the front, dramatically listing her claims, I noticed Darren sitting quietly in the back, half hidden under a baseball cap. I nodded to the agents posted near the entrance. Right as Karen tried to introduce her evidence, one of the agents stepped forward and announced himself. The room froze. Papers dropped. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. Within minutes, Darren was in cuffs, and Karen was being questioned outside. But just as I thought it was over, one of the agents leaned in and told me something I didn't expect. Rick had vanished the night before. His house was empty, gone without a trace. They believed he was the one who'd recruited Darren and fed Karen everything she used against me. The real mastermind might have slipped away, and that meant one thing: this fight wasn't over yet. Not completely. As the room cleared and neighbors whispered in disbelief, I stepped outside into the cool night air. Justice had landed hard on Karen. But in the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was still watching. In the days that followed, everything slowly came into focus. Karen was officially removed from the HOA board, and a formal investigation was launched into her misuse of power and connection to the impersonation incident. Darren faced serious charges for impersonating law enforcement and was taken into custody. As for Rick, despite a quiet warrant being issued, he remained off the grid. Neighbors started coming forward with stories they'd kept to themselves: sudden fines, odd surveillance, feeling intimidated. Turns out, Karen's campaign wasn't just against me. She'd been using the HOA as a tool to push out anyone who didn't fall in line. Maria and I ended up becoming unlikely allies through it all. She testified during the investigation, and her small act of courage was the domino that brought the whole scheme down. I made sure her bravery didn't go unnoticed. With the HOA board restructured and new oversight in place, the neighborhood finally began to feel normal again. People spoke more freely, kids played outside with outside eyes, and that heavy air of control Karen once held started to lift. As for me, I went back to my quiet routine. I never wanted to bring my U.S. Marshal background into this, but sometimes doing the right thing means stepping forward, even when it's uncomfortable. This whole situation reminded me how fragile peace can be when people let power go unchecked. Even in the most peaceful-looking places, drama can run deep. So, if you ever find yourself dealing with someone like Karen, someone who crosses every line just to prove a point, trust your instincts. Stay calm, and don't be afraid to stand up, because in the end, the truth always finds a way out. And sometimes, justice shows up in the most unexpected places.